one of the issues that has appeared on the website is the issue regarding black farmers and what has happened with the black farmer case that we remember from a few years back. So we're pleased to have Mr. Grant here on the telephone to talk with us a little bit about that case. And Mr. Grant, can you give the audience a little bit of background regarding what we've been describing as the black farmer situation?
Well, the black farmer situation has been on the radar screen. It seems to have moved to the back burner and far out of sight. But in 1998, black farmers filed a class action lawsuit against the U.S. Department of Agriculture and then Secretary Dan Glickman for its discrimination and racial discrimination against black farmers in their lending practices, their program delivery services, and being just really late in working with the black farmers and not treating them the same as they were treating our white counterparts. In the 1920s, we owned something like 16 million acres of land, and today we own less than 3 million acres of land. We lost 98% of all black farmers between 1920 and 1992, with a 72% decline between 1972 and 1992. So that was a 20-year period of decline there.
Okay. All right. But Mr. Grant, many of our listeners that have watched and are astute and watch the news probably remember that the case was solved. There was some resolution with regard to this case, wasn't there?
Well, as we would say, a bittersweet resolution to it, that the case was settled for $2.4 billion, and that all the farmers should have been paid who made it into the class should have been paid within a 5-year period. We are now in the 7th year, and we still have not gotten all of the farmers who made it into the class paid, and that was less than, there were 22,000 farmers who were admitted, and only about 13,000 of them actually got into positive evaluations of their cases. In that 7-year period time, of the $2.4 billion, and that's billion with a B, it's not million, billion, less than $900 million has been paid out to the farmers in increments of $50,000.
Okay. As a lawyer, what would you say about this particular case? There's a determination some 7 years ago. It sounds like it hasn't quite been handled to its full capacity. Any comment?
Well, unfortunately, this again is another scenario where people of color are caught up in a system that oftentimes rejects them and acts in a very slow manner. And oftentimes, as in this situation, when something comes to some partial fruition, you have a condition where many of the farmers who are relying upon and hopeful about some settlement in this thing are out of business. And again, it typifies our situation in this country. That is, we have dissipating assets, we have very little land to hold on to, and it's getting worse and worse by the day. And I think one of my concerns is that oftentimes our community is asleep on these issues, because these are issues that make the day. These are the issues that we should be very much concerned about. That is, having enough assets, or having assets to rely upon to leave from one generation to another, and to leave a legacy from one generation to another.
Okay.
And if I can chime in there, that has been the only legacy that we've had, and that is land to leave to our children. We've not had money, cash to leave them, so the land has been the cash that has been left. And as long as you have land, you're able to generate cash. So if the land is taken away from us, it then makes us once again paupers and beggars and at the mercy of those who are in power.
Like it seems like with many other things, this speaks to the fact that we really need to look at our history, because it's interesting as you talk about the fact that there's discrimination and that a lot of people were not included in the class action that should have gotten the information. It speaks to sharecropping, the issues that were surrounding sharecropping, where a lot of people lost their land or due to taxes and discriminatory practices. But it also speaks to the issues regarding how we need to, in our communities, take control of the things we can control to the best of our ability for instance, spreading information, because a lot of
Right.
the information, even for instance, when the march from Selma to Montgomery went on, they used that opportunity to stop off in some of the more remote areas and get people to, SNCC use that to get people to become more informed about voting, and to use it for future situations that come across. But it's unfortunate that obviously we won, like Mr. Grant said, a bittersweet victory. So it was a victory that we were able to prove that there was discrimination, but we should have had the numbers that would make it something that they can't ignore for 7 years, because there's so many people that are keeping it in the forefront.
Okay, all right. Now, it's been 7 years since the courts made their determination, and obviously they've been slow, if not completely absent, in affecting the solution that they themselves had decided. So it leads to the question, Mr. Grant, what should we be doing to work on our own solution?
So let me say this first of all. Let's not blame the court for something that it did not do. This was a consent agreement made between the black farmers' lawyers and the USDA.
All right.
The court just accepted it, and the farmers were not satisfied with this settlement. But it's still just a long, integral story, and I'm sure that the attorney sitting there on the panel would say he's probably never heard of a class action being settled where every individual had to go back in and prove all over again what the class had already proven.
Right.
So that's one of the interesting pieces about this. But our city cousins, you all who have left the South, who have air property that you don't pay enough attention to the taxes needing to be paid, or you don't give support to the one family member who stayed at home, or we're going to fight about who's going to control the land even though you're 500 miles away. That's one of the big issues that we have. Families need to start talking to each other so that we can save the rest of the land that we have. The second thing is that you need to call your representatives and raise the issue of the black farmer struggle with them. And it doesn't matter whether your representative is black or white, the issue has to come before the Congress. It was the Congress that actually lifted the time limit from, because most of the farmers would not have been able to make it in because the statute of limitations had passed, and the Congress actually had to pass a law, policy, or something to lift the statute of limitations that allowed farmers between 1981 and 1996 to get into the class. Even with that, some 70,000 black farmers did not make it into the class. The third thing is that Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney, Congressman Arthur Davis, and Congressman G.K. Butterfield will be introduced to, McKinney and Davis has already introduced legislation to reopen the class so that these 70,000 people can get back in. And Butterfield will be introducing legislation that will help to address the systemic sickness and racism over at USDA so that the farmers who are out there can still survive. While we're sitting here allowing all of this land to be taken away from us, we become that much more dependent upon corporate agribusiness for our food that is growing unhealthy food for us, and that's another whole issue that needs to be talked about.